Hi, and welcome to Leaders of the Jewel City. I'm Rich Wells, the Public Information Officer for the City of Glendale. Leaders of the Jewel City gives you an inside look into the decisions that help shape our city through the eyes of former mayors. In the coming months, we'll talk with these former city leaders about issues and projects they worked on during their term in office. Our guest this month is Bob Garcin, who served on the City Council from 1975 to 1983 and who held the position of mayor from April of 1978 to April of 1979. We caught up with Bob during his recent visit to Glendale. Bob, tell me a little bit about how you became involved in politics in Glendale.
Oh boy, that goes back. My best recollection is that I moved into the Glendale area, actually in the Whiting Woods part of Glendale. My wife and I moved in 1958, to the best of my recollection. The Whiting Woods group had a very active homeowners association. And we, of course, became members of that association. And after attending a few meetings, it became an interesting thing for me to do as a sideline. I'm a practicing lawyer at the time. And I became president of the association. A few years after that, the issue arose of the 210 freeway. Where was it going to go in the northern part of the city? One of the routes that was being promoted was actually going to come right into Whiting Woods. And I would have seen it from my bedroom, so it was really something of a concern. I've made an appearance before council, city council, on at least one occasion, maybe two, to discuss that issue and what this council can do to help us in putting the route where it really ends up now and where it is now and where I always thought it should be now, up in the northern part of the area. But in the process of doing that, there was a councilman that called me one day and said, "Would you like to serve on the zoning board?" And being a real estate lawyer, I had some knowledge of zoning matters, and I said, "Sure, I'd be happy to." And indeed, I got on the zoning board and served. It's a 6-year term. So that's the way I got into the political arena, through the zoning board. Met a lot of nice people like Jack Pike of the old Pikes Paducah Oaks area, and there were many others that I met, and in the city as well as on the board.
So you're ultimately elected to the city council. Tell me a little bit about the makeup of your city council back then.
My recollection was in 1975, I think, was when I was elected. Carl Messick was on, had been there for some time. Jim Perkins, I think, was there. Warren Haverkamp. I think Vern Allen was a member of the council at the time when I came aboard. As I say, it was in 1975, so I had been here for some 15 years or so in the community, and found it very interesting to first run and then secondly be elected. It was somewhat of a thrill. My family got a kick out of it and started going to the council meetings and enjoyed it very much.
Now, you served with 2 different city managers, correct?
Oh, yes. Yes. Mr. Perkins was the city manager. As I remember when I came to town and when I got elected, Gene Perkins had been on as city manager for many, many years. After he retired, as I recall, we had a little problem getting a city manager because we didn't have one in training, so to speak. But more importantly than getting a city manager, about the same time, the community and the council were thinking in terms of redevelopment, because we had a brand boulevard that we were afraid was going to become a Hollywood boulevard. That was really the characterization that we put to it. And we had to do something to stimulate the business community to bring the city into another generation, so to speak. So we did look for and found a very good redevelopment director in Jerry Keithley. And Jerry not only did the redevelopment, but he kind of tinkered with the city manager's role as well, but he didn't like that. That wasn't his, that isn't why we hired him. That really wasn't his style. Right. So, and after about 3 or 4 years of that, it just didn't seem to be working too well. So we needed a permanent city manager, and Mr. Keithley was able to recommend a gentleman down in San Diego who just happened to be looking for a city that belonged to CalPERS, which we did, and his city, San Diego, did not. So Hugh McKinley was willing to come up and talk to us, and we chatted with him and struck it off right away, and we hired Hugh McKinley, and terrific city manager, and served the city well.
Can you talk a little bit about that process of bringing on a new city manager?
It was really a pretty easy process because we did have the need. So all we had to do now is find a person, and when you go to another city, as we did with San Diego, and find a person who had experience in a city, San Diego is larger than Glendale, we knew we had an experienced person. I think I already knew Pete Wilson, who was then the mayor of San Diego, and I talked to Pete, and others did as well, and he highly recommended Hugh, and it just seemed like a natural fit.
Right.
I remember I was mayor at the time, because I remember Hugh referring to me as his mayor, because when the city manager comes aboard, whoever the mayor is, that's his mayor.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, Hugh and his wife and my family got along very well. Enjoyed the experience, and he was very, very good for the city.
Bob, talk to me a little bit about what was Glendale like at the time you were in office. Can you describe Glendale at that time?
Well, that's really a pretty broad question, because characterizing the city is not easy, in the sense that I had already an image of the city from living in the Hollywood area where I was raised. And we in Hollywood had thought of Glendale as pretty much a sleepy town that closed up at 6 o'clock at night and nothing happened. It was real quiet.
Real bedroom community.
Real bedroom community. And when that was one of the reasons I wanted to move here. And when indeed we did move here and then got involved a little bit with politics, it was obviously more of an active community than I had thought. And it didn't literally roll up the streets at night. It was active. It was good. Pretty conservative community, active enough to have people interested in all of the different committees that we needed to have people to serve in, and willing to serve. A good tax base at the time, but we knew we could make it better. We needed to make it better. Shortly after I came aboard, we were finishing up with the Galleria, which was obviously a huge stimulus to the community. One of my neighbors in Whiting Woods was the owner of a jewelry store on Brand Boulevard. Bob Fallon owned a jewelry store, and he had told me about how desperate the community, the merchants felt that the street was, as I mentioned earlier, that it might become a Hollywood Boulevard. And as we got going with the redevelopment, Bob would tell me, boy, you guys have really done the right thing. Now we see buildings going up on Brand. We see the street being lined with trees and things that really dressed it up and made it a bustling community, a bustling business community.
Well, let's stay with that for a second. Do you think the Galleria was one of the more significant projects for this city?
Without doubt. Without a doubt. It was the project. There was no competitor of that, but what we got from the Galleria. It actually literally, if not saved the city from desperations, it bounced the city up the ladder multifold. I know some of my friends over in Burbank were not happy with it, that's for sure. But we kind of got there ahead of them, and we did what we felt we had to do, and it paid off. It was just absolutely tremendous. Other buildings, as you know, started building nearby and going up, and as all those buildings came up, people came in, and business started to generate.
Bob, there are changes, obviously, in every decade. Talk about some of the changes that were taking place when you were in office in the 70s and early 80s.
Some of the changes, I'm sure I can't recall all, but we had a demographic issue in trying to develop, again, we're somewhat back to the development concept, properties south of Colorado. We had a number of very old homes, single family, cottages, that type of a development that we thought could be improved upon by having larger homes, multifamily homes and apartments and things of that sort that needed to be upgraded for the benefit of the community at large. We were mindful of that issue, and the council was trying to do what they could to help it, whether it be zoning or whether it be street work or something of that sort to improve the community. Also, during my time in service, if I'm through at 85, 86, while I'm still active with the community and the airport facility, that makes me still involved with the government of the city. We had a major influx of the Armenian population. There were Armenians here when I was elected, and I was pleased to have their support in running from office and being one of their council people that were mindful of their needs.
Bob, during your period of time, again, getting back to the 1970s, early 80s, I'm sure everybody had their favorite restaurants and places that they like to go shop. Talk a little bit about Glendale back then.
My recollection is that the department store in town was Webb's. Everybody went to Webb's. I think I was mayor when Webb's burned down. I know I was at the building when the fire was being put out because Alan Stone was the fire chief at the time, and I was talking to Alan at the scene. I think I was probably there as the mayor, but I'm not sure. That was a major change that, in a sense, probably, I hate to say this, but it was probably better for the community to have the building down so we could put in a new one and get more business going. But in any event, that was a blow to the community to lose that store. Restaurant-wise, Jack Pike's Verdugo Oaks was the place to go. He had dancing and a lot of entertainment. Maybe it was where I would come in. Matter of fact, I think Newt Russell's son-in-law was an entertainer that would come in and do some I forget his name at the present time. Very, very talented boy would come in to Pike's. Other restaurants that we had, of course, was Damon's, and when it was over on Central before it moved on to Brand, was a good restaurant.
Now, and Damon's had to move because of the Galleria, correct?
That's right. The redevelopment had them, forced them out, and they ended up in a better place, I think. On the bottom line, I think that Mr. Ivesey today is very pleased with the restaurant as it's standing. And
of course, there was Bob's Big Boy, too.
There's Bob's. That's right. Bob's was right here in Glendale. That's right.
Yeah.
Bob Wine. That's right. He was mayor.
Yes.
I think that's right. He was mayor. Sure. Yeah. Bob Wine.
Bob, it's my understanding one of the more significant events that took place was when Glendale decided to build a golf course on top of the Shoal Canyon landfill. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. That was a very aggressive move. Landfills are not favored in communities, and to deal with them is very difficult. The city departments, the engineering department, and the rest of them did an excellent job of stabilizing that fill and actually being able to put a golf course in place, which was and is an advantage to the community. I have played it once or twice. I don't remember that much about how well I did. I don't think that's very important, but it's an interesting thing to do in a community, to take a dump site, if you will, and caress it into a very attractive and usable product like a golf course. So I think that the city is to be commended for having done that. I didn't participate a great deal in designing any of that. I know it was going on, but again, it was something that the council supported, and we're very pleased that it took place.
It's turned out to be a very positive move for the city.
Yes, it seems to be doing very well. I haven't followed it too well, but I understand that it's done very well.
What were some of the more significant challenges? I imagine perhaps even the Galleria might be listed on as one of your more difficult challenges at the time.
I don't think of the Galleria as a challenge for me. I think the council that preceded me that made the decision to do the condemnation, to put the package together, is the ones that they really are entitled to get that credit. Continuing with the Galleria in the sense that recognizing what it was worth to us, we continued, along with Jerry Keithley, to develop the rest of Brand and other parts of the city with commercial structures, office buildings, banks, and the like, because it was obvious now that we had a drawing, if you will, to the Galleria. We had people, and people are what you need to fill buildings, and it all kind of just fell one right after the other. Just came right along. So it was, although tough work, it was pleasant work, and it was very productive, very productive.
Hillsides have always been an issue or a challenge.
Did you
to many
have
councils.
to mention the word hillsides? I think almost from the day, well, practically from the day I moved into Whiting Woods, the issue of hillsides, I was involved with part of it with that freeway issue.
Sure.
What's it going to do to the hillsides? But beyond that, of course, the building of homes in hillsides has always been, and I think even today still is, an issue. What's the slope? How many people are you going to have? What's it going to do to the appearance, if not just the actual turf itself? What's going to happen to us? So I think that councils, both before and after me, and I'm sure even now, struggle with the issue of hillside development. What does that really mean? And there are people that have fictions in their mind about hillside development that eliminates the hillside. It just absolutely destroys it, takes it away, and that's, I don't think, ever true. You have to be careful about how you do your development, and you have to contribute with whatever is necessary to help offset some of the disadvantages. But the development itself is good for the community. It brings a lot of, and has brought a lot of people to this community that might not otherwise be here.
Thinking back to some of the issues you dealt with, and including maybe the hillside issue, how did your council deal with some of these issues back then? How did you face some of your challenges?
The only way that we really could face them from a community standpoint was to have hearings. And we had a lot of hearings. Well, not only the council, but the planning commission and the zoning boards would have these hearings, and people would come in and make their rightful claims as to what they think was being done or not done, and then we would have to ultimately make the decision to either proceed or not. It was an effort that the council worked on together. We would debate these issues in front of the public and make decisions.
What was one of the most difficult decisions you made while you were in office?
Boy, that really is a tough question to answer. The most difficult decision. Well, I would guess the development. Again, it's a hillside issue, but the development on the 2 freeway and homes that were built opposite the college on the east side of 2. The homes that the Brock Company built was definitely visible. It was viewed as you would come up the 2. And people didn't like that were living in that part of the town. So it was difficult, but it did just what I said that we did before. It went through the process. It went through planning. They did things. There were a lot of changes that were made before they built. And I think today, matter of fact, I drove up here to chat with you today, coming up that street, it looks fine. It's not a scar. It doesn't destroy the mountainside. It's very compatible to the community. So time has a lot to do with solving problems that appear to be, or at least characterized to be, disastrous that turn out not to be so.
Bob, talk about some of your accomplishments while you were in office.
Oh boy. One of them was staying in office. That was an accomplishment. I didn't have the support of everybody, obviously, but there was a division in time of re-elections about my being involved with the building industry, in the sense that as an attorney I represented some of the builders, and I have to admit I'm more of a conservative than I am liberal, and am not too favorably inclined with unions, so I didn't have the support of the union folks that were in the town, including the firemen and the policemen. And although I had great respect for both of them, I just and they had me to their meetings, and we discussed it, and they were frank in saying no, that they weren't going to support me, and I said I understand that, and we had no problem with that at all. Having been elected as I was, I served them the best I could to do what I can. So that was a problem in that things were not always 100% smooth. It was 85% smooth. Mm-hmm. It was 15% rumble. Mm-hmm. But that's to be expected, and I have no regrets about any of that. We had a lot of community activities that were interesting, and we developed a lot of different park sites, and we had different events at the parks that were interesting that people liked a lot. I think this community has always been somewhat of an outdoor community, and they enjoy their space, and that's great. We did have a very, very sad event happen where a coyote had taken hold of a young child at the doorstep, and that, of course, was bad. So we had a lot of hearings on that issue. And one of the community members that I think contributed a lot to that discussion was a lady that I can't remember her name, but she recommended that we as a city, provide watering holes in the mountain areas to keep the animals from coming to the communities. It made a lot of sense, and we did that. And I think that even today may be what's helping with that issue, because I haven't heard of any serious issues in that at all. Mm-hmm. By then I had moved from the corner of Whiting Woods up into the Mesa Lila area, which was more into the mountainside, and that's where the event took place. But that was sad, and that, of course, got our attention, and I think we did follow her advice, and we did help with that plan.
On the positive side, you had mentioned, of course, the hiring of the new city manager. You thought it was a real wonderful experience. And then you also mentioned to me that you had the honor of bringing out one of our local celebrities.
Yes, that's one event that I will never forget. I was so proud to be able to do it. It turns out that Admiral, I don't know if he's still with us or not, but Vice Admiral Hayworth was a Glendale resident. And at the time that I was mayor, I think the second time, I'm not too sure which one it was now, but at that time Admiral Hayworth was appointed to be the chief of not just naval operations, but of the combined forces.
Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Joint Chiefs of Staff. He was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And knowing that he was a Glendale person, I was pushing for an event that would honor him for that, and we did have in this community an Admiral Hayworth Day. He came to the council with his wife, and we were having a wonderful time, and I told him while he was sitting in the front row, I said, "This is going to be the greatest enjoyment of my life, Admiral, because as a retired naval officer, I never had the opportunity to do this, but I'm going to say now, Admiral, front and center." So he had to get up and come up before me, and I handed him his certificate of merit in honor and recognition of a wonderful person, wonderful person. That really is a highlight in my recollection of serving on the city.
Bob, in addition to your normal duties, you also served on the Burbank Airport board for some time. Talk about that.
Oh boy, that really is something, because I had a total of 19 years on the airport commission.
19 years.
19 years. 10 of those as the president. So I have an awful lot of recollections of the airport and its troubles and its problems. And it solicited a lot of aggravation in the community. I think part of the problem that facility had in those days, I don't know about today, I haven't been following it that closely, but whenever you have a partnership, and we did have and do have a partnership with Glendale, Pasadena, and Burbank, and the asset that belongs to that partnership, in this case the airport, is in one of those cities' jurisdiction, it's just ripe for difficulties. It's the motivations behind the representatives of the cities vary. Certainly those that come from Burbank have a much more difficult time in dealing with their community than we in Glendale or in Pasadena. And the hope is, and I hope that it's true, that neither Glendale nor Pasadena are pass off those problems that Burbank has. We address them and we try to do what we can to help them. But you never get 100% agreement on anything of that sort. And believe me, the meetings of the airport authority very, very hot, and the attendance of those that are in and around the area are very great. So that was those years were difficult, but it was a test to just hang in there and do what the bigger community, the larger community needed to have that facility. It's done a wonder for the entire area, Pasadena included. So we just stuck to our guns and fought the battles as they came. Went back to Washington several times to do things. Had to deal with Lockheed. Problems were there.
The airport's a great resource, isn't it?
Oh, it's absolutely incredibly great. You just can't characterize the degree to which it's contributed to this community, not just in travel but in commercial activities, cargo, and so it's just been wonderful. Just been wonderful.
Bob, looking back on your career and looking back on your years on the council, is there anything you might change? Anything you'd rather, if you look back, and you might want to do differently?
And sure, I'm sure that there are some things that I'm somewhat of a brash individual, and I speak my mind pretty openly, and I don't really watch everything I say all the time. So yeah, I probably would have been a little bit more politic in what I did and said. But then I'm sure if I tried that, it wouldn't be me. So no, I guess in hindsight, there's nothing that I can think of that I would have done differently. I did one thing that I'm very, very happy with, and that is we as a city became a participant in the federal government's hiring job. I forget what they call CETA.
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 Mm-hmm.
And I was mayor at the time, and I didn't like that kind of a program. And I challenged the Chamber of Commerce was running it, and I challenged the chamber president. And I said, "You find me somebody. If this is a good program, I need a secretary. You find me a secretary." Well, he did. She's been with me 30 years and progressed greatly, and I'm very proud of her. And but for that challenge, I wouldn't have had the pleasure of having her with me.
Right.
So that worked out.
Bob, think about Glendale perhaps back in the 70s, early 80s. If you're driving down Brand Boulevard, and then think about what Glendale is today if you drive down Brand Boulevard, compare the two.
I have done that. I can actually say that I have done that. Today, I'm almost lost as I drive that street. It's not a big street. It's not a large boulevard that I should be confused with, but it seems to be so tiny. It seems to be so compact. And part of it because there's so many cars on it. Mm-hmm. But it's a different feel. I'm hoping that it's a better feel, not having been here for 10, 12 years or so, I don't know, but it is definitely a different feel. I came up here to enjoy dinner at Joe Ivesey's restaurant when he recognized the former mayor. Is at a party, give or take, 6 months ago or something like that. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting going into the back to park the car like I used to when I go to that restaurant with my son many times and see the volume that's here. I mean, it's a different feeling of the community. It's busy. There's just a lot of action going on.
You still enjoy coming up and visiting old friends?
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. Yeah, as long as the trains keep running, I'll do it. I don't want to drive up anymore. Can't afford it anymore with gas.
Right.
But the train is pleasant. It's a pleasant ride. It takes me right to Oceanside, which is near where I get 10 minutes from my home, and so it's, yeah, I expect to come up.
Is there anything, looking back now, any humorous moments you can remember, anything that was fun or enjoyable?
Well, I can tell you, knowing Carol Parcher, who, as you may recall, his father was our first mayor. Knowing Carol, who was running the Glendale News Press at the time, was one of the best events of my life. He and I traveled a couple of times, once to Japan to see our sister city in Higashiosaka, and once down to Mexico to see our sister city, Tlaquepaque. And being with Carol and listening to him and learning as much as I could from him was something that I won't ever forget. He was just an absolutely wonderful person. And I'm sure he, without even my knowing it, helped me a great deal. And I'm sure that there are times when I didn't do what I might normally have done because Carol was around, or I knew Carol was there. He had a lot of influence on me. He really did. He really did.
What are you doing these days, Bob?
Enjoying retirement. I retired May of '06 after many years. I guess I don't even know what they are anymore. I've stopped counting them, but I'm living in Carlsbad. I moved down there in '01. Actually, 2000, just before 9/11. My wife and I down there and enjoy Carlsbad very much. I served a little bit for the Carlsbad community on a committee dealing with real estate issues, but I've not been active in politics there, and I don't really have any desire to. Gave up golf a little bit ago. It's getting a little bit too strenuous to play, but I still keep playing my handball. That's what I enjoy. That's my exercise. I have 3 days a week playing handball.
Bob, how would you like to be remembered?
That's a good question. I would like to be remembered by this community as somebody who was interested in the community, committed to doing service for the community, hopefully provided positives for the community. I know the community has changed a lot since I was here. But I hope that I know there are several people I can think about that think that I've done some pretty good things. And Larry Zarian and I are pretty good friends, and I see Larry as often as I can. And it's people like Larry that I am very fond of that make this community what it is today. It's different. If I were to move back to this community, I'm sure I'd have to adjust to the changes that are taking place, but that's the way communities are. Hopefully they're all for the good.
Well, Bob, I'd like to thank you for coming up and joining us today, all the way from Carlsbad, and sharing some of your memories and your experiences with us. I know it's been educational for me, and I'm sure for a lot of the people watching at home. And again, thank you very much for coming and sharing those with us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.